Hi, thanks for watching BibleMountain.com. In this video we're going to read from Exodus 6 and 7 and talk about how sometimes failure actually equals success. We Christians often talk about the Great Commission. God has commissioned us to go out and make disciples of all the nations. And with that, it's easy for us to fall into the mindset of thinking that our success is determined by how many people we convert to Christianity. What we're going to see in Exodus 6 and 7 is Moses had a similar mindset. God told Moses to go to Egypt and talk to Pharaoh and lead the Israelites out of slavery. And so Moses got into the mindset of thinking that his success was determined by whether or not he could persuade Pharaoh to release the Israelites. However, what we see in Exodus 6 and 7 is God had a different definition of success. God actually did not intend for Moses to successfully persuade Pharaoh. God had a different method for getting the Israelites out of slavery. And instead, God's definition of success for Moses was for Moses to obey God and do what God told him to do. And so the lesson for us as we go about our lives and seek to fulfill the Great Commission is our success is not necessarily determined by how many people we persuade to become Christians. Instead, our success is determined by whether or not we obey God and whether or not we speak the truth in our society. Now, before we get into Exodus 6, let's review the first few chapters to set some context. Exodus chapter 1 tells us that the Israelites went to Egypt. There was about 70 of them. They were in Egypt for several centuries. They became numerous. And eventually the Egyptians turned the Israelites into slaves. Exodus 2 tells us about the first 80 years of the life of Moses. Moses was an Israelite, but he was adopted by Pharaoh's daughter, and so he grew up as part of the Egyptian royal family. When Moses was an adult, he killed an Egyptian, so he had to leave Egypt, and he went to the land of Midian, and he was there for several decades. And then Exodus 3 and 4 tell us that while Moses was in Midian, God appeared to Moses and told him to go back to Egypt and lead the Israelites out of slavery. Now, Moses objected to that plan, as we see in Exodus 4, verse 10. Then Moses said to Yahweh, "Please, Master, I have never been eloquent, neither recently nor in time past, nor since you have spoken to your servant, for I am slow of speech and slow of tongue." So notice Moses was focused on his limitations. Moses was not eloquent. Moses was slow of speech and slow of tongue. And so when God told Moses to go speak to Pharaoh and lead the Israelites out of Egypt, Moses focused on his limitations and believed that he would not be able to do what God told him to do. Then in verse 11 we read, Yahweh said to Moses, "Who has made man's mouth, or who makes him mute or deaf or seeing or blind? Is it not I, Yahweh? Now then, go, and I, even I, will be with your mouth and teach you what you are to say." So God reminded Moses that God's the one who created Moses and all humans. God's the one that created man's mouth, and so God has the ability to give Moses the ability to do what God was telling Moses to do. So then we read in Exodus 5 that Moses did indeed leave Midian. He went back to Egypt and he spoke to Pharaoh. However, things got worse. Pharaoh increased the amount of labor that the Israelites had to do, and so the Israelites turned against Moses and Aaron. And that's the context that we start reading today in Exodus chapter 6. Now Yahweh spoke to Moses saying, "Go tell Pharaoh, king of Egypt, to let the sons of Israel go out of his land." Now again, this is the second time. Moses had already gone to Pharaoh once, and now God is telling Moses to go to talk to Pharaoh a second time. Verse 12, "But Moses spoke before Yahweh, saying, Behold, the sons of Israel have not listened to me. How then will Pharaoh listen to me? For I am unskilled in speech." So Moses pointed out that the Israelites had turned against Moses, and if that was so, why would Pharaoh listen to Moses? And further, we see Moses once again focused on his limitations. Moses believed he was unskilled in speech. Thus Moses believed he would not be able to do what God was telling him to do. And the reason for that is Moses was thinking that he had to persuade Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. But we'll see that that was not the case. Verse 13. Then Yahweh spoke to Moses and to Aaron and gave them a charge to the sons of Israel and to Pharaoh king of Egypt to bring the sons of Israel out of the land of Egypt. Notice the word charge. God gave Moses and Aaron a formal charge, a formal assignment to go and speak to Pharaoh. Now notice the charge was to Moses and Aaron. You notice the author has a minor break in the text at this point, and at this point the author goes on a bit of a diversion with a genealogy of Moses and Aaron. I'm not going to read that, but I do want to skim through it and highlight a few things. So the Israelites were descended from a man named Israel. Israel also was named Jacob, and Israel had 12 sons. Reuben was the first son, and verse 14 lists the sons of Reuben. And then Simeon was the second son, and these were his sons. And then Levi was the third son, and these were the sons of Levi. Notice verse 16 tells us that Levi lived 137 years, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. And then verse 17 lists the sons of Gershon. Gershon was the son of Levi. And then verse 18 lists the sons of Kohath. And again, here we're told Kohath lived 133 years, and we'll come back to that in a little bit. Kohath had 4 sons. And then verse 19 lists the sons of Merari. Verse 20 lists the sons of Amram. Amram was a son of Kohath, who was a son of Levi, who was a son of Israel. And here it tells us Amram's life was 137 years. And also this verse tells us that Amram was the father of Aaron and Moses. And now we see why these years are placed in here. These years indicate to us how many years there were between Israel and Levi and Moses and Aaron. Then verse 21 tells us the sons of Izhar. Izhar was an uncle of Aaron and Moses. And then verse 22 tells us the sons of Uzziel. Uzziel was also an uncle of Moses and Aaron. And then verse 23 lists the sons of Aaron, who were Nadab, Abihu, Eleazar, and Ithamar. Also, it tells us that Aaron's wife was Elisheba. She was the daughter of Aminadab and the sister of Nachshon. Aminadab and Nachshon were members of the tribe of Judah. And also, Nachshon's name comes up again later in the Bible story. Nachshon was the leader of the tribe of Judah while the Israelites were wandering in the wilderness, which we read about in the book of Numbers. Verse 24 tells us who lists for us the sons of Korah. Now, Korah is significant. In Numbers chapter 16, we read about a rebellion against Moses and Aaron, and Korah was the leader of that rebellion. And this genealogy tells us that Korah was a cousin to Moses and Aaron. And so when you read Numbers 16 and read about the rebellion of Korah, keep in mind that Korah was a cousin to Moses and Aaron. Verse 25 mentions Eleazar's son Phinehas, and now this is significant because you have this genealogical line here. Later we'll read in Exodus and Leviticus that Aaron was made the first high priest, and then the high priesthood was passed down to his son Eleazar, and then it was passed down to his son Phinehas, and that's why they are mentioned here in this genealogy. And then we get to verse 26 and we read this. It was the same Aaron and Moses to whom Yahweh said, "Bring out the sons of Israel from the land of Egypt according to their hosts." Moses and Aaron were the ones who spoke to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, about bringing out the sons of Israel from Egypt. It was the same Moses and Aaron. Now it came about on that day when Yahweh spoke to Moses in the land of Egypt, that Yahweh spoke to Moses, saying, "I am Yahweh. Speak to Pharaoh, king of Egypt, all that I speak to you." But Moses said before Yahweh, "Behold, I am unskilled in speech. How then will Pharaoh listen to me?" And so again, notice Moses was focused on his limitations. He was unskilled in speech. Moses was thinking that his success would be determined by persuading Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. And Moses believed that since he was unskilled in speech, he was not going to be successful. And so he was asking God why God was asking him to do this. Exodus 7. Then Yahweh said to Moses, "Look, I make you as God to Pharaoh, and your brother Aaron shall be your prophet. You shall speak all that I command you, and your brother Aaron shall speak to Pharaoh, that Pharaoh let the sons of Israel go out of his land. But, notice the word but, I will harden Pharaoh's heart, so that I may multiply my signs and my wonders in the land of Egypt. So here we see God had a different plan. Moses was thinking that he was the one that had to go and persuade Pharaoh to let the Israelites go. And so Moses believed he was not going to succeed because he was unskilled in speech. But here we see that God was going to harden Pharaoh's heart. God's plan did not require Pharaoh to be persuaded. Instead, God's plan was he wanted to multiply his signs and his wonders in the land of Egypt. And so God really needed Pharaoh to not be persuaded. Verse 4. When, and notice the word when, this was not if, this was when. When Pharaoh does not listen to you, then I will lay my hand on Egypt to bring out my host, my people, the sons of Israel, from the land of Egypt by great judgments. And so here, God is revealing his plan some more. God was planning to use great judgments to get the Israelites out of Egypt. And so God did not need Moses to persuade Pharaoh. The Egyptians shall know that I am Yahweh when I stretch out my hand on Egypt to bring out the sons of Israel from their midst. Notice the phrase, shall know. The Egyptians shall know that God is Yahweh. And so God was going to use this to prove his existence and to demonstrate his power to the Egyptians. So Moses and Aaron did as Yahweh commanded them, thus they did. Moses was 80 years old and Aaron 83 when Moses and Aaron spoke to Pharaoh. And then notice there's a major break, and we will stop reading Exodus at that point. Notice it was Moses was 80, Aaron was 83. And again, God's objective was not for Moses to persuade Pharaoh. Instead, God intended to use miracles and signs to force Pharaoh to release the Israelites. Now, there's several other passages in the Bible that tell us something similar, that God actually did not intend for people to respond to a message. This is from Isaiah 6. This is God speaking to Isaiah. God said, "Go and tell the Israelites, keep on listening, but do not perceive. Keep on looking, but do not understand. Render the hearts of the Israelites insensitive and their ears dull and their eyes dim. Otherwise, they might see with their eyes and hear with their ears and understand with their hearts and return and be healed." So we see here God did not want the Israelites to see or hear. God did not want the Israelites to understand and return and be healed. And the reason was, at this point in time, God had sent prophet after prophet after prophet to the Israelites, but the Israelites had not listened. And so at this point in time, it was too late for the Israelites. God had determined that the Israelites needed to be punished, and so he was telling Isaiah it was too late, and the Israelites were not going to respond to his message. We see a similar thing in Jeremiah chapter 14. So Yahweh said to Jeremiah, "Do not pray for the welfare of the Judahites. When they fast, I am not going to listen to their cry. When they offer burnt offering and grain offering, I am not going to accept them. Rather, I am going to make an end of them by the sword, by famine, and by pestilence." And so this was the same situation. At this time, the tribe of Judah was out of time. God had sent prophet after prophet. They had not listened. They had continued to sin. And so at this point, God had determined that he was going to punish them. And he told Jeremiah, don't even bother to pray for the tribe of Judah because it's too late. Now let's review. God told Moses to go to Egypt, talk to Pharaoh, and lead the Israelites out of slavery. Moses had the mindset that his success was determined by whether or not he could persuade Pharaoh to release the Israelites. And since Moses was unskilled in speech and slow of tongue, Moses believed he was going to fail. But what we saw in this passage is that God's definition of success was not that Moses would persuade Pharaoh. Instead, God's definition of success was for Moses to obey God. God had a different plan for getting the Israelites out of Egypt. And the lesson for us is, as we go about our lives and we seek to fulfill the Great Commission, our success is not necessarily determined by how many people we persuade to become Christians. We don't control that. The only thing we control is what we do. And so our success is determined by whether or not we obey God, whether or not we go out in our world and our culture and speak the truth about God to those who need to hear it. And whether or not they respond and believe and convert is out of our control. And so again, our success is not determined by how many people we convert to Christianity. Instead, our success is determined by whether or not we obey God and speak the truth. Thanks for watching BibleMountain.com. Bible Mountain exists to develop biblically literate Christians because the Bible is from God and each one of us is accountable to God for knowing and following the Bible. It is in our best interest to learn as much about the Bible as we possibly can. If you'd like to increase your biblical literacy, please join my email list so you can receive future videos via email for free. There are links on this video screen to take you to a sign-up page, or you can go to BibleMountain.com and click on Follow. This is a free subscription and your email address will not be sold nor given away. Also, please use the share buttons on your webpage to like this video and share it with your friends. And once again, thank you for watching BibleMountain.com.